Okay, welcome back to Ideas That Work and Beyond. We have had the pleasure to talk to Mr. Giancarlo Pierosuti of Richfield, and he's actually a former aide to two U.S. presidents, the former President Bush and the current President Bush. And right now, before we went on break, I said you had a new job. It's not like a paying job, it's a volunteer job, right?
Correct.
Okay, you were appointed to the Connecticut Development Authority Board of Directors.
That's right.
Okay, now can you tell us more about it and what we need to look forward to?
Sure. The Connecticut Development Authority, CDA, as Lynn and Marty both know, is a so-called quasi-public entity that was created by the legislature, I believe, in the early 70s as a means to help businesses that are currently in Connecticut grow, as well as to attract new businesses to the state. It's one of the economic development tools at the government's disposal. And essentially, we do a lot of things, but one of the main things we do is provide financing to companies that need it and to companies that need the incentive of financing to stay in our state. And I can give you two examples. One example might be a company that's having trouble, say a manufacturing company in our state that's having trouble getting a loan from a bank because they've had a rocky financial history. But for reasons that the CDA would decide based on recommendations of the staff and discussions among the board, we'd say that's a vital industry that we want to try to keep in this state because we want to keep manufacturing jobs, obviously not let them go under or go elsewhere. So we might guarantee the loan. We might back up the loan that People's Bank or Webster's Bank, et cetera, would try to give. We would act as the guarantor of that loan as an incentive to keep that company in Connecticut. That's one example. Another example would be not just for small business, but for large businesses that are perhaps moving their corporate headquarters or want to increase their footprint in the state. Companies that are big and multinational and prosperous, a lot of states would like to see that company leave Connecticut and set up their headquarters in their state. So we have to offer incentives by way of grants or loans to incent them to stay within our borders.
Question I have is what are one or two things that Connecticut can uniquely offer to USB, the bank, to a Boehringer Ingelheim,
right.
To a Mankind, which is doing a big expansion in Danbury.
Yeah, what makes Connecticut attractive that we can highlight and enhance, and then also what aspects of the business environment are something, maybe high taxation, maybe insufficient transportation?
Right.
What are things that would cause a company to choose to go somewhere else?
Go somewhere else. Well, the answer to your first question, in my opinion, there are really two things that make Connecticut unique. One we have no control over, and one we have a lot of control over. We have no control over where we're located.
Wait, you're in the government. You have control over everything.
Well, no, Marty, I'm a Republican, so I don't believe I have control over everything.
It's the Democrats that have control over
it. But, you know, we are, in terms of what we don't have control over, you know, is our situation, our geography. We are ideally located. We're obviously a port state with a good bit of ocean frontage, or at least sound frontage.
Yeah.
And we're positioned between Boston and New York City. We're an ideal location to do business. We don't have any control over that, obviously, but we benefit from it. What we do have control over is our population and our citizenry. And I think Connecticut, I've been fortunate enough to live in a lot of places and travel to many more. And I think that in many ways, this is the best state in the union to live in terms of the kind of people that are here, the sense of community that is here, the quality of life that we have to offer, the educated population that we have. It can't be beat. And I think that's very attractive to companies as they look to, especially high-tech companies that need you know, an educated, dynamic workforce to pull from.
Yeah.
That we offer, and we can control that by way of you know, dedication to education, by you know, less regulation, fostering a business climate, ensuring that that this is a state whose arms are open to people of all stripes and all socioeconomic backgrounds.
But one of the problems with our location is that many people from our area are now working down in southern Fairfield County.
Yep.
It's that reverse commuting, and that employers and businesses in Danbury can't find workers who live here, so they're going out of the region to get good people to work for them, too.
That's right. And that's absolutely a problem. You mentioned our infrastructure, and our infrastructure is something that's concerning to me. I think it's been ignored our roads, our mass transit. I mean, the fact that you can't take mass transit from Fairfield County to Hartford, to me, is mind-boggling. The fact that, we live in Ridgefield, Marty, and as you and I know, most of our commuters to New York City have to go to Westchester to catch a decent train to go in, and there's no excuse for that. And we've ignored that problem for a long, long time. There's certainly enough blame to go around as to why that's the case.
But 95 and Route 7 is always choked with traffic.
I mean, it
spills over into the communities.
It's ridiculous. You talk to people who live in the city or point south and travel up to New England. You say you're from Connecticut, and all they want to tell you is the only thing I know about Connecticut is that's where I hit a dead stop on a Friday afternoon on my way up to Vermont. And
it's true.
That can't continue. It can't continue for a lot of reasons, and we have to get creative about ways to fix that, that problem.
No, we needed a Robert Moses who laid out the New York State parkways. We need a visionary way back when.
We need a lot of things.
It's hard to play catch up, now. I mean, they're trying to on Route 7 by expanding that. What about taxation? When you think of Connecticut, when you see the ratings of states, Connecticut is always among the highest in taxation. Is that a disincentive to business? Can you explain that away when you're trying to attract a business? Or
I don't think there's any question that that's a disincentive. That Connecticut's level of taxation and regulation too, I would add. I think back to when I was a boy and we would come up to Connecticut. I grew up in New York City, and so we would come up to Connecticut to spend a weekend or have a family outing, etc. And those were my first experiences with this state, and the more I learned about Connecticut, I learned of companies such as Xerox that were started up and headquartered in Rochester, New York, and then made a decision to move to Connecticut. Similarly, General Electric decided to set up their corporate headquarters here. And you look back at the time when they did that, and there were reasons for it. And the reasons that they did it was Connecticut, because of its unique location, also has, that's exactly right. There was no state sales tax at the time. Regulations were less. Taxation in general was less than New York, than Massachusetts, and a lot of other places. And it was an ideal place to foster and grow businesses, which is why so many corporate headquarters moved here. And I have a deep fear that that era is slowly passing us by, and that our legislature is in a race to the bottom or to the top, depending on how you look at it, to try to see that the era of regulation and taxation comes back. And that really scares me. And I think that we have to remember what it was that lured the diverse corporate base and business base that we have at this state to our state at one point in time, and do what we can to remember history and to try to repeat it.
And Lynn, you created some of that history. Maybe you could respond.
Well, but on the other hand, we don't want people dying from eating peanut butter. So, there's regulation out there for good cause.
Okay, before you respond, let me take a call, okay?
Sure.
All right. Caller, you're in the air.
Good evening. You didn't think you would get by without me calling you.
Hey, Frank. How you doing?
Hey, man. Oh, I have so many questions, but you only have a few minutes left. Union Carbide came here. Duracell came here. All these. It was a friendly state for businesses to come back in the 70s. My parents' companies came here. Duracell. It was friendly for businesses, for job creators. Then our friends to the left of the studio there, our friend Lynn Taversack, our Trotsky friend legislators have figured, ooh, now that we have them trapped, let's go after them to pay for our socialist programs. So we'll give them the income tax. And then what do they do with that money? They hire like 60,000 state employees. Most of them do nothing. They sit around. Some of them do work. They're state police officers or highway workers, but I think there's 30,000, 40,000 of them that don't really do a hell of a lot, and some of my relatives have those kind of jobs. Right? And this is like I'm not allowed to walk around certain state buildings on Elm Street because the people get upset with me watching them do little or nothing. So they have a wanted poster of me in some of the offices there. So, I mean, Lynn, after the income tax, I mean, we're losing congressional districts, and I go on and on and on. But it's a hostile state for businesses and job creators. It's not going to change, and that's just my view.
Giancarlo's going to change that.
Who is?
Our guest this evening.
Oh, I hope he runs for for office for governor or something there. He sounds like he's a good guy. So I got to ask this, Kane. Did you work with our favorite local Secret Service agent over the years, Bob Solomon?
Well, I never worked with him. I know Bob. We serve on the Republican State Central Committee together, Frank. But no, I never worked with him in that capacity. Not while he was carrying a gun.
I love walking around this home office and seeing the various pictures of presidents that he worked under, President Johnson. Yeah. And I'm sorry to see that he left the state of Connecticut. He's been a friend, and we're going to miss him. Anyway, okay. I cannot be mean to Lynn Tabersack, otherwise I'm going to call from my plumber friend from Ridgefield.
Yeah. Okay. Come on, George, call him up.
All right, Frank.
Ivan, don't blame me. I vote for Duvalier.
Thanks, Frank. Okay. Now, what were you saying before?
The question was,
well,
some regulation.
Okay, but Lynn, you were in the state legislature at the time when they passed the income tax and created some of this hostile environment that you're talking about. So maybe you could speak to it.
With the income tax was to give Connecticut a stream of income that was reliable. You know, we had years of budget surplus and then deficits, surplus deficits, and you wanted this base that was stable. I think it was a good move for our state, and I think it's made it stable. But I think we have a guest here who is going on to our development authority, and I believe that you're going to try to make Connecticut a place where business will want to come and relocate, because we do have a problem. We're losing young people between the ages of, what, 18 and 34? They're leaving Connecticut to work.
But, you know, Lynn, you raise an interesting point. That's true. But I think that one of the reasons that Connecticut is losing its younger population is sort of the inverse of why they're fleeing other states. I have in-laws on my wife from the state of Maine originally. And in Maine, you have young people leaving for the simple reason that there's not a lot of opportunity for them there. It's not that there's not a lot of opportunity in Connecticut. Exactly. It's that the cost of living to maintain a decent standard of living and the types of jobs typically that are offered in this state are pretty ambitious. And it's tough for someone right out of college to land a good-paying corporate job and maintain the kind of lifestyle that one would have to maintain to live, say, in southern Fairfield County.
But you know that in Danbury, this current mayor is giving these tax incentives to businesses coming here. Right. But he's also doing something that no other mayors have done, is the fact that he's also giving incentive to developers.
Yeah.
To develop, I guess, it's some way to somehow reduce the housing.
It's a silly theory that if you build out everything commercially, your grand list will go up. And a grand list is like your local community piggy bank, and it can pay for the things that you need, your fire, your police, or your public education.
Right.
But do you think?
But it ends up being a disaster.
But do you think that giving those developers tax incentive, do you think that would also help to bring back those?
That's what he's going to do.
Well, you know, it's an interesting question, and I would defer to the resident expert here in our town of Ridgefield, because the issue that the issue that I believe Ridgefield faces, not to make this a parochial conversation. But you know, the percentage of non-residential tax income as it relates to Ridgefield's grand list is tiny.
Nothing. Yeah.
And so
it's almost 90-10.
There you go.
90% residential.
There you go.
Tax comes from residential, 10% from commercial.
Right. And Ridgefield, at least for education purposes, is constantly being compared to other places, other towns like New Canaan, Darien, Wilton, Greenwich, etc., where the percentage of non-residential tax revenue is significantly higher than it is in Ridgefield. And so, do you have to strike, to your point, or to your question, Ivan, do you have to strike a balance? Absolutely. But that balance is different from town to town and from city to city. Clearly what's right for Danbury wouldn't necessarily be right for Ridgefield. But to take sort of the extreme, Ridgefield needs to do a much better job of attracting business and trying to grow our non-residential tax base, in my opinion.
What I'd like to see when you go on the board of directors is that when we give incentives to businesses to relocate here, that they actually do create jobs. And if they have a change of heart and they're wooed by some other suitor who has more incentives to give them, that they pay back.
Well, I can give you an example in Ridgefield. Boren and Engelheim wanted to expand their operation, but I think 500,000 square feet or something like that. We welcomed that with open arms. We thought that was great. We even gave them a tax incentive of 7 years tax-free to come, and it's been a great boon to the economy and the tax base of Ridgefield. But developers that want to develop residentially, they want to put up 400 condo units. We're not that attracted to those types of development, because at the end of the day, more likely you have more students you have to put in the schools. There's more services.
It's a net loss to the town.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So that's a concern.
Absolutely.
So you just want to, what is it, population control?
Not exactly population control, but just not developing every square foot of available land. We just had, I think, how many acres was Bennett's Pond? I want to say about
So
like
over 600.
yeah, about 600 acres
Yeah.
of Bennett's Pond that was given away to open space, so it can never be developed.
Right.
And we're always looking for that in Ridgefield to, maintain sort of the rural feel of the town. That's what we're trying to do.
Now-
So development is a bit of, the right type of development is welcomed. Commercial development, but not so much real estate development.
Okay.
Or residential development.
Now, you spoke about the infrastructure, how it's not up to par where it should be to meet the demand, at least for the businesses, the new businesses. But in Danbury alone, it's overdeveloped, and the influx of people coming in, the infrastructure is really bad here. So, and we're also trying to attract new businesses. So how do we move forward? What kind of advice would you give to the common council and also the mayor about the state of Danbury right now?
Well, I'm certainly not an expert in at the state of Danbury, but I would say, Ivan, that there's got to be a balance. That clearly it's a goal of most, if not every, locality in this state to attract business, to attract good-paying jobs, to grow their economy. But with that growth, obviously comes the sort of challenges that you just mentioned, and it's incumbent upon the business community, not just for social reasons, but for business reasons, to help manage the infrastructure crisis, to help manage the strain that they as businesses put on the communities in which they're located. Do I have one magic solution for how you do that? No. But the way you get to that solution is through a dialogue and through public-private partnerships.
Don't you think that the Danbury to Waterbury corridor is probably one of the best areas to try to develop businesses, rather than the Stamford to Norwalk corridor, which is right now?
So it's too
Lynn, I don't-
crowded, yeah.
It's
Newtown.
crowded, yeah,
I mean,
but
that-
I wouldn't say that I agree with that, only because business is going to settle where business is going to settle, right? We live in a free market economy, and in that environment, businesses have a way of gravitating to where they know
To
they're going to be
Norwalk, where
most
there's
profitable.
gridlock, or
Well,
Yeah, but it's closer to New York City and some of the, route or Interstate 95 corridor, so that might be where they're attracted.
I think we have
We have
potential
a phone
there.
call.
uh-oh.
Caller, you're in the air. Caller? Oh, yeah. Sorry about that. Okay, go ahead.
No problem. So I think that, certainly the CDA has an obligation to try to spread the wealth, literally and figuratively, around the state as much as possible. But in terms of dictating where that goes, I think the market's going to determine.
But, I like the idea of the partnership with the businesses
Yeah.
to somehow, I guess, improve the infrastructure, because the more business you have, of course, you're going to attract the 18 to 24-year-old. And so that sounds like a sound idea, but if we
It
give
doesn't
them...
work like that.
It doesn't. But the thing is this, though: they're getting help from the state. They're getting these tax
If you
credit
look at
from the city. They should be able to take some of that money and put back
But
into the city.
You look at the Danbury Fair Mall when it was developed, they completely surrounded Marcus Dairy with ramps. I mean, Wilmerite didn't come to Danbury and say, we're going to fix 84 so that people can get in here. That was a project that was undertaken completely with public money. And when you go there, aren't you amazed? I mean, You've encircled Marcus Jerry with ramps going in every possible direction.
Right.
We're paying for those benefits for businesses.
Right. And you know, bring that up. You know, I mentioned coming to Connecticut as a kid. I remember coming to the Danbury Fair when the mall of Danbury Fair Mall didn't exist, and it was just the Danbury Fair, and it was this really neat, you know, environment that had a great local feel to it. And you know, we came up several times, and you know, now I live 10 minutes away. And is it different? You better believe it's different.
But on balance, are you saying that we shouldn't have done the Danbury Fair?
What I'm saying is if we get jilted in these arrangements, that there needs to be a price to pay.
There does, but let me, if I may, Evan, let me give an example of something that's going on that's boding well, I think, for the state of Connecticut. You mentioned Southern Fairfield County. Right now, the Union Bank of Switzerland has a huge facility. I believe it's the largest trading floor in the world, right across the street from the McKinney Transportation Center, the Stamford train station. Across the street from UBS, the Royal Bank of Scotland is purportedly going to put in an even bigger trading floor.
Okay, yeah.
And every morning, what do you see? You see trainloads of young people coming up from New York City, taking the train to Stamford, getting off, and walking across the street to go to work in one of those two buildings.
Because
and at the
you
end
can't
of the
get
day,
there from Danbury.
No, but at the end of the day, they're getting back on the train and they're going back.
New York.
These are good-paying jobs that Connecticut is providing for young people. They're
not for people who live in Danbury.
Well, okay, fair enough. But I'm trying to take the broad view here. My point is, and hold on, and this will,
state level,
but this could get to Danbury. So what happens when those young people, maybe some of them are right out of college, they make that commute, maybe some of them get married and they say to themselves, well, you know, it's time to settle down and raise a family. And boy, Connecticut sure seems like a great state to do that. And maybe I can't afford to live in Stamford or in Greenwich or in Westport right away. So maybe I'll move a little further north to a town like Ridgefield or
Like
Danbury, etc. And I'll brave the commute. I'll come down through the back roads and I'll continue my job down there. There's one scenario.
Okay, we have about 3 minutes left. We're going to take the last call. Caller, you're in the air. Caller?
Yes.
Okay, you're in the air. Go ahead.
Yes, I'd like to remind Ms. Tabersack that the Danbury Fair Mall is the largest taxpayer in the city of Danbury. I'd also like to remind her that the Marcus Dairy is no longer producing milk there, and they've moved out. The Danbury Fair Mall set the stage for quite a bit of economic development in the city of Danbury, and I think she might need a little history lesson, but thank you.
I think that
Thank you.
retail jobs are probably the most dead-end jobs you could ever create in Danbury. And anyone who works in
You know what? That should
Macy's
be...
or any of the stores there, the McDonald's, the food court, I don't think they're quite making it in this
You know
town.
what? That should be a show. That is actually should be a show. So
We do get a lot of sales tax revenue.
we have 2 minutes. We're going to go around the table, and then I will say the last word. We'll start with you, Lynn.
Oh, God, no, end with me.
Okay, end with you. We'll start with you.
Well, just to, I mean, you could probably do a show all alone, but retail jobs aren't necessarily the kind of jobs you want to raise a family on. But for the entry level to the economy, management jobs within there, I mean, many people started off on that rung and worked their way up. So I don't think it's
All
necessarily
right,
bad.
thank you. Go ahead, sir.
And
Yeah,
thank
Just
you.
wanted to say, no, not at all. Thanks for having me, Ivan. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much. Okay, we have 30 seconds. I would like to say thank you very much. A great discussion. Next week is even going to be better because we have Elena Brenters. We'll be back again. And also, we have Gene Ericress. He also going to be on the show. So you got former mayor and hopefully
Thank
future
God
mayor,
we're
right?
evening up the sides. I want Marty.
Sir, thank you very much. And now please come back and let us know what is going on with the, with the board and the future things that you guys are doing for Connecticut.
I will do that.
Okay?
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for watching, and please tune in next week because we're going to have the former mayor and hopefully the future mayor of Danbury on the show all at once, and also we're going to talk about the Hispanic Center, all that good stuff. Thank you very much. See you next week. And if you missed the show this week, tonight, you can also see it tomorrow, which is Friday at 12 noon. All right? Bye-bye.